Baird country. Okay, everybody, welcome to Baird country. Today we have Dave Marrone, awesome guest. Dave is the owner and operator of Lure of the North, and he runs traditional style winter camping trips. Some of them last weeks long, amazing stories. And he also lives off-grid in the bush in a house him and his wife built, not to mention they milled all the lumber to build it. So very, very broad span of skills. Looking forward to talking to you, Dave. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jim. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time, and been wanting to get out here for a long time. It's awesome to be here. Awesome to see your place.
Yeah, it's good that I finally was able to tie you down. Not always the easiest because you're off. I'm out in the Arctic. You're off in the Hudson's Bay watershed and all kinds of cool stuff. But you started to tell me this story about a canoe trip that you did a long time ago. And it sort of had a disastrous beginning to it. Can you jump into that?
Yeah, so, well, a little bit of context is that I didn't grow up with any wilderness experience. So,
Belleville?
Belleville. Sometime actually, first 10 years out outskirts of Vancouver, and then Belleville here in Ontario. And yeah, lots of fields to play in, but no vast expanses of wilderness. So there was no canoe experience, no backpacking experience, and didn't go to a camp. And so once I kind of discovered this in sort of my late teens, it was like didn't really have a mentor, so it was very much like trial by fire. And there was a number of trips where almost killed myself, and and learned very quickly. And also I think because you're learning so quickly those first couple trips out, you look back at how little you used to know, and like after 2 trips you think you're an expert, right? So you just don't realize how much more you don't know yet. Right. So my buddies and I, I had kind of discovered paddling and decided, okay, I'm going to get into this, and didn't know if I'd have people to go with that often. So, okay, I'm going to buy a sea kayak, and then looked at the prices of sea kayaks, saw that whitewater kayaks were cheaper, and so I was like, I'm a whitewater kayaker now. So yeah, I basically let my budget just dictate, this is my sport now, right? So I had a whitewater kayak. I think I'd used it about twice. One of those outings had fire department called, but that's a totally different story. So yeah, a couple of outings, think I'm an expert, and talk to my friends. I say, I've read about this river. It's in Algonquin Park, the Petawawa River, and just sounds like this incredible week-long wilderness experience. We'll get out there, and we're not going to see anyone. And yeah, so we put the plan together, right? And we get out there. And I'm the experienced one with like 2 days of experience. And we don't make advanced plans for where we're going to get a whitewater canoe. And we just figured, we heard there was an outfitter up there on Cedar Lake. So we show up there and say, yeah, we want a whitewater canoe. And he's got the kayak, and that'll be it. Yeah. And the guy goes, well, I don't have whitewater canoes, and I don't rent canoes for going down the river. I've got some fiberglass lake canoes, and you can use them to go down the river, but absolutely do not run any of the rapids. So my friends go, okay, yeah, that's fine. We won't run any of the rapids. And so, yeah, we get this, flat bottom, 17-foot flat water canoe, and we start loading up. And right away, the outfitter's like, you could just see his eyes kind of go, right? He's like, what are you guys doing? Because everything's packed just in grocery bags, right? Tied up grocery bags. There's like the loaf of bread's just going loose in the canoe. Even though we said we're not going to run any of the rapids, and we assured the outfitter numerous times we're not going to run the rapids. Well, one friend's got a hockey helmet with full face mask, right? So it's pretty clear what we had in mind,
right?
And just he could tell the way we're loading the canoe. It's like, these guys have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
But we're trying to play it cool, trying to act experienced, and we get loaded up and we get going down the lake. And, my friends are zigzagging the whole way down the lake. Yeah. We kind of shamefacedly head out. First night, we just go camp on an island there on the lake. So the next morning, I don't remember the name of the first rapid, but It's I mean, pretty good rapid, 2 parts with a nice big pool, like an eddy in the middle. And so, we don't scout the thing. We just line up at the top of the rapid, and I'm like, guys, see you down at the bottom, right? There's no plans. So I run down, and I make it successfully down, and like, just amazing, right? Like, I never experienced anything like that, like walls of water hitting you in the face, and like, make it down to the eddy, pull out, and I'm like, so psyched. I just grab the kayak, I run back up to the top. Gonna run this again. And so I say to my friends, okay, it's your turn. It's great. No problems. So they start out the canoe fully loaded, right? We don't portage anything. It's like, this will be fine. We got the loose bag of sliced bread and everything else. And, so they start down, and I can't, it's a hectic environment. It's loud, and I'm sort of sitting down at water level in my kayak and trying to watch them. And it looks like they're having an awesome time. So I'm here like, yeah. And meanwhile, my friends later tell me that they've already dumped out of the canoe, and I don't realize this. They've wrapped the canoe on the rock.
Oh, no.
And the one friend is pinned by the canoe, between the canoe and the rock. And so they're trying to figure out, and he had pretty substantial bruising on it. Like, so it was serious pinning. And they're trying to figure out what to do. And then they say at one point, one friend, he looks upstream and he goes, and they're just freaking out, right? And he looks upstream and he goes, and Dave's cheering. So after a little bit, I go, oh yeah, like, they're not moving. Something's wrong. Of course, I should portage back down, and, but instead I'm like, I'll run down, figure it out, go rescue them, be the hero. So I jump in the kayak and I head off into the rapid. I dump immediately.
Oh no.
And at that point, I like, not only can I not roll, I don't even like have the concept of how you would begin to start the roll, right? So like, as soon as I dump, it's just, pull the skirt and swim. So I go swimming past them. I wash right through the eddy, down the second part of the rapid as well, yeah. And I wash out quite a ways. So this was like, it wasn't early enough in the spring that the water was like deadly cold, but it was springtime, height of the bugs, cold water. And so like, I'm swimming after my kayak. By the time I finally catch it, I'm thinking like, okay, I got to get back and like figure out what's going on with them. So I don't have time to really rescue the kayak. I see like this sweeper coming out, hanging out, a tree hanging out over the river. Perfect. Just push the upside down kayak in against the sweeper. I'll deal with it later. I get out and I go running back up to try and see how my friends are doing. And I end up, because I'm so far from the portage, I'm kind of bushwhacking through like rough terrain, rocky terrain, no shoes. So it ends up like pretty slow going, and I'm picking my way up and just like getting, and like just a PFD and shorts, right? Just getting demolished by the black flies as I'm kind of picking my way through the rocks. And so, my friends, again, like we put the story together after, right? So they had rescued themselves. They'd gone back in the canoe. They had come down, and then they just see a kayak upside down pushed into this sweeper, right? And so they're screaming, and I don't know, like, it's not a huge distance, but just the noise of the rapid and whatever else, just being in thick bush, they're screaming, we're not connecting, and they're like, he's dead, first morning out, he's dead. But anyways, we do eventually reconnect. And we did complete the river, but they had a canoe that leaked. They managed to straighten the canoe back out. Like, it wrapped pretty good fold around that rock. They straightened it out. It leaked a little bit, but not
sure
so
the
bad.
outfitter was just thrilled.
Yeah, so actually about 2 or 3 days in.
So you kept going.
Yeah, we kept going. And we were planning to like take responsibility for the canoe, but like not mid-trip. It's like, let's finish the trip. We'll deal with that later. I wonder if you're just like, well, how much worse than that is it going to get? Right? Yeah.
Like, we made it through this. We already thought you died. We dumped. I'm bruised. Like, we got nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yes, the outfitter, he was so concerned that one night we're camped on the rail bed, or close to the rail bed. And you can actually, the rail bed parallels the river quite a bit. and I don't think it's like really advertised, but you can drive down the rail bed a little ways. So the outfitter had driven down because he was just like, I guess he was having nightmares about these 3 guys that he'd sent down the river, right? So he came to check on us, and we're in our tents, and we hear him, and my buddies are so worried about the canoe. They're like, Dave, go out, distract them. So we've got the canoe flipped upside down so you can see the hull damage. Right. So I'm like out there like being like, oh, you should check out these neat rocks down at shore. So yeah, and you know, for the next few days we're like heading down the river, finding the bag of like soaked bread still floating by, and like we lost so much stuff. Nothing's waterproof, nothing was floating.
Yeah. So your clothes are soaked pretty much. Yeah. Sleeping bags soaked too.
I don't remember. Probably. I mean, basically everything. Like we hadn't waterproofed anything, right? So yeah.
Everything was soaked.
Yeah. Conditions were pretty friendly though after that, so I think like recovery wasn't too bad, but yeah.
I'm telling you, there's something about Cedar Lake that's just like, I've heard bad stories, the wind on it. I've heard people say it's always windy, but I remember one time I started paddling out there and there was huge waves. They're out from shore, and I was just a little gung-ho, and there's this other group, like I think of 4 canoes, and a couple of the guys are like, should we go out there? I'm like, oh yeah, it's set out there, woo, we surf the waves. And I get out there, it was in the spring too, I didn't have my dry suit on, I guess I was being a little too cocky. My buddy who was in the bow, who I literally picked up, he was like on his way hitchhiking back from BC. He hadn't seen his parents in something like 2 years. And I was just like, Marty, you want to ride? And he just like, my other buddy bailed, and he just like jumped in my truck, and we just drove up there. So he just like has no idea what the hell's going on. And we're stuck in these huge waves, end up turning, and then when I get out into them, I turn, and then we're kind of going with them, and not so big that we'd surf and breach and dump, but the whitecaps would break under the canoe, and then the canoe would sink in the water. So there's enough with those breaking whitecaps. It's like a hole in a rapid where there's enough water to fill up your canoe, but not enough water to float you. So we were like, we got to shore. So we ended up getting to shore, waiting a bit. And then, doing this, crazy kind of last final crossing where other people were staying put. But we had dry suits. We had a spray deck on, right? And later we'd found out that those other guys back at the put-in, hopefully not due to me being like, just get out there. Like I was being an idiot for even my outfit. But they went out there and they all got separated, and they all were okay. But one guy had the food, one guy had the stove, one guy had the tent, and it's howling wind. Nobody knew where anyone was, and it was like a disaster, and it was just like ended their trip. Right. You know, so I don't know. That's Cedar Lake, man. Bad stuff happens there. This is just another story. Yeah. Pretty awesome river though, eh? Yeah, it is. Oh yeah. Yeah. For my friends, it's become like an annual tradition. I've joined them a few times. Yeah. And it's spectacular every time. But for them, that was like such a good experience that, they've probably done it 14, 15 times now. So even though they dumped, they thought their buddy died. It's such a good experience, and they did it a ton of times in a row. Your friends sound like pretty hardy adventurers, man. Yeah. Do you think there's something to do, something like that? Like if you can withstand a bit of adversity, that it sort of becomes like type 2 fun, and you learn from it, and it in a way kind of gets you addicted to adventure? Like, do you think there's some components there? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's like for us, you can't go out and look for misfortune, of course, but like those have definitely been like those early formative trips. They do often, they're some of the most memorable ones. And yeah, just the satisfaction. I think like our everyday lives are so safe and so managed, right? That like you can go, I'm 18 and I hadn't experienced like that level of adversity of like, oh my gosh, I better get down there and help save my friends because no one else is going to. Yeah. And then of course the tables flip and now they're trying to save me. Right. Yeah. But yeah, I think. And then some time goes by and you laugh about it hysterically, right? And it's just something about that very real. With me, that's one of the things I just love about just living up north, like last night, well, there's ice rain coming. We got a bunch of wood that, we don't want it to get all wet. We've got to get finished stocking the wood shed, and I'm out there loading it in and driving around. I got a headlamp on, and it's starting to freaking snow and rain, and it's about 10 o'clock at night, and I'm driving up the hill. I'm just thinking, I love this.
Yeah.
It's just like so much more real. Like, you're out there, you're really doing it. I don't know what it is, but like a little bit of cold, a little bit of doing it yourself. I don't know, but I guess I'm probably preaching to the choir when I'm mentioning that, right? Because that's what you do. But first, tell. Now I know a fair amount about Lure of the North, but tell us a little bit more about Lure of the North, what you guys offer and what you do, and I mean, maybe how you got into it as well.
Yeah. So Lure of the North, we're traditional winter travel. I mean, we do some other stuff in the other seasons as well, but really our focus has been on the winter. And so it's snowshoe journeys, which are really like the best way to describe them is just like a canoe trip in the winter, right?
Yeah.
So it's the traditional routes, which the winter routes are very, very similar to the summer routes. So you're still on lakes and rivers, you're on the waterways, you've got the portages between the waterways. Sometimes spots that would be impassable in the summer, like some of these swamps and stuff, are now passable. But for the most part, like the routes are 80-90% of the same as the summer routes. And so, it's just traveling through a landscape, breaking camp and moving each day. We haul everything on long, narrow toboggans that fit well in the snowshoe track. Bring canvas tents, wood stoves. So it's a lot of work, but in the evenings, everyone kind of pitches in, and you can, arrive at a little cedar swamp or something and pack out a nice site, get a bunch of firewood in, get it all bucked and split. If the environment allows, get a nice bough floor, and it's like you can be so comfortable as a group in that camp. So that sort of, and our trips are, the shortest trip we offer these days is a week because, that's sort of a different part of our philosophy. But they range from 1 to 3 weeks. We had a special 72-day trip one year as well, but generally sort of 1 to 3 weeks. The way we got into it, I think we were winter camping as part of our, desire just to be outside all the time and be on trips. And we met at university. So of course the university year runs from fall to spring. So you've got the whole winter there. So Kylan and I were getting out on trips together. And I think it was just, we were working outdoor ed. We were working out west on Vancouver Island, and the season there was spring, summer, fall. So, we'd get seasonally laid off and had some free time in the winter. And so the trips, just started to get longer. And the one year we did a 40-day trip together. And like, it was such an amazing experience and so much different. So we'd read this book, Snow Walker's Companion, by Garrett and Alexander Conover. And like their entire approach was like, we can't look at alpine and Arctic stuff to use in the boreal forest. We have to look at techniques that really evolved within the boreal forest, and that's going to fit, the environment hasn't changed. Right. And so we're like, this it just makes a lot of sense that a lot of those techniques are still going to fit inside this boreal forest environment. And so like that 40-day trip, we finished it and we were like, we could have just kept going. Like it felt like it's so sustainable and like every day you're refreshed, right? You're renewed. Your gear is dry, you had a great meal, your water's hot to start the day, and like it just feels like life, and
you're talking about, having a wall tent or a canvas tent with a wood stove and just the extra kind of comfort that gives you to enable you to go longer and still be comfortable out there essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, I always had this impression growing up, like the West is best, right? And it was like, I'm here in Ontario because that's where my family lives, but like the goal is get out west, get to the mountains, get to BC. And it's spectacular out there too, but what Kylan and I were finding was like, we're going out west, spring, summer, fall. We're coming back to Ontario in the winter. And the more we kind of went back and forth, the more we ended up talking about like, I'm so looking forward to getting back to Ontario. And it was like this sort of funny, like, oh, no, I didn't think that was going to happen.
Right.
And I think the biggest part was like the alpine environment that we were sort of playing in out west is so fragile, right? Like, you know, it's like, I mean, they're, you know, nowadays they're even saying like, don't swim in the mountain tarns because, you know, just the grease and oils off your body. It's such a sensitive, small environment that's going to affect it.
What's a tarn?
A tarn would be like just a small lake, like a small meltwater pool.
Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, always cold. It's always snow melt, but, you know, you can be up in the mountains and, you know, in the summer, you know, it can be 20 degrees, so it can be quite warm, but there's still, you know, it's still surrounded by snow, so it's all meltwater and cold. But some days it's, you know, it can feel really refreshing to jump in, but...
So you're not supposed to jump into those ponds anymore?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
so you know, like, aren't the moose like shitting in it? You know?
Well, no. So like up in that sort of alpine environment, there's like, I mean, you're seeing ptarmigan and that's about it, but like no sort of big game, like, you know, so it's...
So you're up high, you're a higher elevation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like, yeah, and you know, I find it, coming from Ontario, I find it kind of crazy, but also I'm like, I don't know enough about it to maybe make my judgments, but I'm just like, okay, if that's what all the guidebooks are saying is that like, we can't burn any wood, we can't jump in the pools, and I was sort of like, man, Ontario...
Well, there's also avalanches too.
Yeah,
which,
for sure.
You know, kind of are a little spooky. You know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's the other half. So one half was like, just feeling like, yeah, this environment's like, it's not something we can live in long term. We can do these sort of quick visits, but we got to get out again. And the other part was, I was kind of going like, if I have a full career of decades in the outdoors, my chances of survival in Ontario are just a lot higher.
Right. That's true too. No mountain lions. Well, maybe the odd one, but yeah.
So I think that was sort of the biggest thing, was like, we were going, man, in Ontario, like, cutting firewood is no problem. Like, you're in the forest where it's a renewable, abundant resource. You know, if I don't do a lot of fishing, but like, even just the idea that I can pull fish out of the lakes and rivers and that's totally fine, you know. And I was like, that's an environment where people have lived for thousands of years, and like to move through it and take some of the resources is like totally fine.
Yeah, you're sort of really just doing the same thing that people have done for a very long time in that area, you know, and in a sustainable way. And people that, of course, were, you know, part of nature in a larger sense, right? So, you know, that maybe had a place in the ecosystem too, right? So it's really cool. I remember I was talking to you about the Temagami trip I did. Well, of course, we had a terrible year. Yeah. But, you know, I jumped into doing that trip, and we were supposed to make it all the way to Goganda, which is a trip that you do with your clients. And I'm just like, how are these guys breaking camp so fast? Like, I think we didn't really give us enough time, and it was a really bad year, right? So like, everything was just open at the beginning, but so the portage were way longer because we couldn't walk up to the portage. We had to cut into the bushwhack to the trail, portage, and then bushwhack to around the open water at the top, right? Which actually reminds me, I remember you just said how a lot of these traditional routes, like the Nastwagon, they call it, like routes in Temagami, I remember always seeing, and you'll even see them here on the Mag River, but you'll see the portage trail for canoes. And then you'll see, after the portage trail, you'll see this kind of faint trail that continues on. And this is always at a rapid where there's a portage around a falls or a rapid. And I'd always thought that those were high water trails. I thought, well, maybe sometimes that little old looking trail that continues on is for just like early spring when the water is really high. But I realized those are the winter trails.
Yeah.
Right.
And what you would see in particular is in the winter, the upstream end, you can usually get to the portage. Like, the ice will form very, very close to the upstream end of a rapid.
Except last, 2 winters
Yeah,
ago,
in particularly poor
forget it,
winters.
yeah.
But the downstream end,
Yeah.
then that open water carries on for quite a ways.
Because that's where it's got the real speed, because
Yeah,
it's just come
exactly.
tumbling down in elevation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I found that to be really cool, because it just goes to show those trails are, probably animals still use them that are walking along the river in the winter, jumping over to the portage trail, and then where the canoe portage ends, it's open water still in the winter, because that water's moving past there. But then they would continue walking, or people that traveled traditionally, indigenous people back in the day, would continue along the winter trail and get back onto where the ice was good. And now that's probably the only beings that are using it for the most part, other than you and sometimes me and the odd winter camper, are probably animals that are keeping those trails packed in. But I just thought that was so cool, to see that and just really put your footprints in those places where people have been when people were really so close to the land like that. One of the things too that reminds me of what you mentioning, some of the things that traditional gear offers is better than the new stuff. And what just came to mind there, remember I was talking about how I had the modern snowshoes that have the cleats on the bottom, and the cleats put so much pressure when you're walking on ice that you can't actually walk. You can actually walk on much thinner ice safely in the larger snowshoes. Is that true?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the other thing with the crampons is that often, as you know, there's water underlaying the snow. So the pressure of the snow pushing down on the ice will basically push the ice down into the water, and water will seep up through all the little imperfections and cracks in the ice, and then it just floods out and it flows underneath the snow. And because snow is such a great insulator, it will stay liquid for a number of days, even in frigidly cold temperatures. But when you come along and you step on that and you compress that snow down and expose that water, it freezes, and we call that slush, and it really is just like a slushy, and it sticks and it packs, and
it's the worst.
Yeah. And so with just a flat bottom snowshoe, like a traditional snowshoe, you can often feel that slush underneath. Like, it feels kind of like walking on a waterbed, but you might not get 10 people through one trail because the water will have seeped up by the fifth or sixth person, but you can spread out and everyone can get over that slush. But the crampon will dig down into the slush, and it'll pick up a little bit on the tips and a little bit more, and then 50 paces on, you've got this huge ball of ice.
Yeah, it's like making a candle.
Crampon.
You
Exactly.
dip it in, you pull it out, it freezes. You add on to it with every step, and next thing you know, you got 2 huge balls of ice on your feet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which also happens, of course, with any type of snowshoe, but it's the traditional ones. You find it works better, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then one of the things that I thought it was really cool, mixing a little bit of the old with a little bit of the new, was the what you use for webbing on your snowshoes. Am I going to give away your trade secrets now?
No.
Okay. No. So what is that you use?
Yeah, so we use monoline, like 400-pound test fishing line.
Monofilament.
Monofilament. And 250 pounds in the toe and the heel. And yeah, so it really is like, and we've done that like with a lot of the different items that we make, is like, it's still the traditional designs, the traditional styles, but often we've incorporated modern materials. So yeah, it's traditional shape wood frame snowshoes, but with a modern monofilament weave. And I started reading about it. We had a lot of trouble with rawhide snowshoes, just, not really behaving the way we'd expect them to. As soon as they get wet, just get really soggy, and then, the weave starts snapping. And I think, like, you start reading about it, and the traditional made rawhide snowshoes, it was like a real fine art. Like, they talk about, some of these old books are like, obviously the animal that you take it from is important, and caribou was considered like the best rawhide for snowshoes, but also like the time of year it was shot. So it's supposed to be winter shot when they're not full of bug bites, and it's supposed to be free scraped hide, and like lots of
Supposed
different
to be
elements.
a freeze scraped hide.
Yeah.
Too.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. And what's the difference between a freeze scrape? Because freeze tanning is kind of a way, I guess, that people, process. Some people say an easier way to process a hide into, if you're eventually going to make it into leather. But of course, it's just rawhide and snowshoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what's the benefit, about
Yeah,
a
I'm not
freeze?
sure. I mean, I haven't done a lot of tanning. I've played with it a little bit. I've never done any freeze scraping.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. But there's something, you got to listen to these things.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I also think like just even the act of cutting the lacing, a traditional snowshoe maker would have inspected, every little bit of the lacing they cut to make sure there's no imperfections. Commercially cut rawhide probably spun like on a disc or something to cut the lace, and so it's So anyways, I think that the traditional rawhide snowshoes can be really, really good. They've obviously worked for thousands of years, but sometimes in the process, some of that knowledge is lost, and that incorporating of like modern materials can overcome some of that.
And how do you possibly, and especially for the demanding nature of your trips, you got clients out with you, how do you possibly get winter shot caribou rawhide that's ice scraped? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's not going to happen. So that's interesting. I didn't really realize that. Yeah, that's kind of cool that you make all your own. So you did, but you sold that part of Lure of the North to Lure of the North Outfitters that is now providing, because for a long time you were actually making gear and selling it as well. Yeah. On top of leading all your courses. Don't let me, I want to talk to you about the 75-day winter expedition, because that was just wild. But what was that like, living where you live? Can you describe a little bit about that? Because I remember seeing a picture of you having to haul this order of a bunch of gear you and Kai had just made, and you're like literally hauling in a toboggan that's like stacked 12 feet high. It looked like that old famous picture from the logging days of the horses, like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So I mean, we said numerous times, and it was ultimately the decision to like say, we need to move this over to someone else. But like, we operated a retail business out of the least efficient place anyone's probably ever operated a retail business. Our spot's pretty remote. We're just outside Espanola, so we're not too far from town, but to get to our place is either a 6-kilometer boat ride, which isn't too bad, but then it's
not too far from town by your standards. By most people's standards, it would be pretty far.
Yeah, so a trip to Espanola is still like usually a full day affair by the time we get everything packed and in and out. But it's not hours of driving to get there. But 6-kilometer boat across a lake. But then there's a little bit of a creek that you have to wind your way up, and when the water's low, you basically can't get the boat through the creek. So then we've got another access via an old logging road. But it's all clay back where we are. And for anyone that's ever tried to drive on a clay trail that's not been improved, it's like, the clay just soaks up water and just holds it for so long. And clay can be really nice and hard when it's dry. I could talk a lot about clay roads because it's like my life these days. But like midsummer is just like concrete. But like as soon as it starts to get wet and it holds, it's just like muck, that sort of like boot sucking muck that you could lose your shoes in. And like, so those are our two options, like try and drag the boat through the shallow creek to get to the lake, or like go through the mud. And so, we got sort of to the point, like we resisted getting an ATV for a really long time, because when we moved out there, we were quite young, like just out of university, and like, very tight budget. And so you've got all these different priorities of where you've got to, put funds. So we resisted the ATV for 7 years or so. But when we finally did, like, we had one of those sort of crappy little plastic trailers, just sort of typical Canadian Tire ATV trailer. And you just throw so much mud on everything. Like, of course, you get to the post office, and the ladies there at the post office were so nice to us, but like, they get a box and be like, we can't do that. We can't touch this, right? So
because you just hauled this thing through the mud to get it there.
And like this mud is like, like freshly plowed farmer's field type of mud, right? Like, so you're just, so we get to the point where we're like 55-gallon drums were like our covered trailer.
Yeah.
So we'd load the orders into these drums and like strap 3 of these drums on this little trailer behind the ATV.
Yeah.
And then take them out that way.
And ship everything.
And then ship everything. And like, it just was, I mean, the one year we were having boat troubles, and this was when I finally broke and bought an ATV, but we're having boat troubles, and we'd already bought another boat, but we were kind of waiting for it to arrive. And it's too many orders to fit in a canoe. So like, I just had to throw everything in the boat and like row the boat 6 kilometers across the lake.
That's hardcore, man.
Yeah, and like the boat leaks. I remember at one point, like I've got this boat full of orders.
Hey, you had to do it.
Yeah, and everything's in Rubbermaids to kind of keep it dry, but the boat is filling up with so much water that I've now got my feet up on the seat and I'm rowing into a headwind, and I'm like rowing so hard because I'm like, I don't want to stop to bail the boat because I'm like, I'll be halfway back home by the time I get this boat bailed out. So I'm like, I gotta hit that island, stop at the island and bail the boat. And like, I basically am at a standstill. Like I'm rowing so hard and not getting closer to the island, and the boat's continuing to fill up. So anyways, that was something we kind of...
Was that the moment where you're like, I think we should sell this portion of our business?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, it's like... So that actually was the year Kai was away on a loan, so it was like very stressful.
So you want to hear? Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know, Kai was on which season of Alone
7.
again? Season 7 of Alone, right? Okay, so I was there that year. I didn't know that she was on Alone. I know that you two had called me and sort of like peppered me with questions about Alone, but I didn't like, whatever. I didn't know anything happened because I know they kill you if you talk, right? Yeah. I know, I was on too, right? Anyway, so then Ted went up there, my brother Ted, and he actually saw Kai after she got off the show. Yeah. And Ted told me that something like, she's like, well, because you make a certain amount of money, you make a stipend. And she told Ted that basically that you'd spent her entire stipend on an ATV. And that was like the update she got from home. So this must be the same story you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and it was like that year we just tried everything, it's like rowing the boat across the lake. Yeah. Like you saw the picture of me just hand hauling orders. Yeah. Over, and no snow. It was frozen mud, and the toboggans actually pull pretty well.
That was actually at one of your presentations. I don't know whether it was at the winter
went down to the
camping,
Ontario Winter Camping Symposium.
That's right. Yeah. Do you still do those presentations or?
Yeah. We've been life's been kind of crazy, so we haven't made it to as many as we want to.
Same here. I kind of fell off doing them after COVID. Like COVID, I stopped doing them, and I was sort of like, I was kind of going pretty hard at doing them. Not as much as someone like Kevin Callan does. He does like 30 a year or whatever. But I enjoy them. But it is a lot of work, and I'm just like, kind of something had to go. Like I was doing a lot of writing, and I was super intense on the videos, and I was doing presentations. So I sort of like backed off a bit it, but I kind of miss it because it's just good to like interact with people and I don't know, it's good. They're fun.
They are fun, for sure. Yeah.
Anyways,
Kai was just at Freezing Women in Algonquin last week.
Oh yeah,
so
that's a cool name, eh?
Yeah,
yeah, right on. So. Oh man, so let's talk about the 70. So 75 days that long trip was?
Yeah. 72, I think we were out in the field.
Right. Yeah. So okay, this is after the period of time where Kai was on Alone.
Yes.
And I think for people, everybody hears the people that were on Alone talk about what it's like, but very few people get a perspective from the spouse that was on Alone. I remember talking to you, and you're just like, it just felt weird, and your wife was gone. They had 100 and things going. Can you speak to what it was like to have her out there and you back at home all comfy?
Yeah. I mean, it was like going in, I kind of thought, no problem, right? Like I'm like, we live out here, and obviously it's different living in our house, but I'm like, I leave all the time, leave Kai. I never have a second thought that she's going to be okay there alone. Right. And like, I just was like, oh, I'm totally, occasionally we have to split on a trip to guide trips separately if we've got double headers, and like just never had to worry, right? So I'm like, oh, this is going to be no problem. Not going to be one of those warriors. And like, yeah, but you just never know how that's going to affect you. And like to not have any contact and like, I think that to cut to the end, it was the hardest 3 months I've ever lived. And it was like the first time I've sort of understood when people talk about like mental health. Cause I was like, man, I was like, almost felt like I had an injury. It was like, I was just really like, it didn't take much to kind of set me off, and the biggest thing was like going to bed and thinking like, my wife is probably hungry tonight. And to be like, I had a full supper and she might not have eaten anything. And it kind of got, so Kai went 80 days, and like, that was the only season where they've had a cap. So that season was capped at 100 days. Mm-hmm. And so in my head, I was sort of like, and I had a bit of background because I had gone to boot camp that year. So I'd met a few people, and like, I kind of just heard some stories of like how far people push it and how hard it is. So I think I didn't have some of that naivete that maybe some other spouses might.
Right.
But I got to a point where I'm like, once she passes 70 days, I'm like, maybe it's starting to feel close, and like maybe now she'll just push through like any sort of hardship. So it was like the farther she got, the more I kind of worried how much is she suffering. And it was hard. Yeah.
I never thought of it from that perspective, really.
Right.
But just hearing what you're saying right now, yeah, I think I would be a basket case out there. It did help me. And some people go the opposite way, but you're allowed to bring like one picture. So I looked at a picture of Tori, and when me and my brother were up in the Arctic, we found this pendant of a frog. Looked like it came from a Vancouver, souvenir shop, because it said the spirit of good luck.
Okay.
In the Tlingit culture, they think frogs are good luck, right? And Tagish and a lot of those West Coast tribes. So we kept that on us because we're like, spirit of good luck. We found it here in the tundra. We ended up surviving this perilous paddle along the coast, and they wouldn't let me bring it. So I got Tori to pose holding it in a picture.
Nice.
So I could have my good luck charm. And I looked at that picture and I was like, I just imagined she'd say, you'll be home before too long. You can do it. You know what I mean? And that really helped me. Like I could imagine that for some people it'd be the opposite what we're out there. But it never really crossed my mind at the same extent what it's like to be, especially doing what you do, to have your wife out there too, especially that paradigm, because you're the man, you're supposed to be like the one protecting her, not like letting her just be cast into the wilderness, right? I know that it's a show and all this is, and it's totally fine to do that, but there's probably that root biological thing potentially where that's going to be harder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's crazy. But what did you do afterwards? You next thing you know, Kai's planning a 75-day adventure.
I think that was a bit of a like a gift from her to me, right? Was that like, I mean, even though what she did was so hard and involved a lot of suffering, I was aware of that. Like I wasn't totally blind to that, but I still was like very jealous.
Right.
I wanted to be out there.
Love the honesty, because it was you that tried to get on that show initially, and you were the fan, and then Kai's like, oh, I want to try, and of course they pick her. Who
wouldn't?
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. Right. Like for the most part.
Yeah. So I was quite jealous, and and we get a lot of bush time, right? I mean, we live out in the bush, but like that sort of length of really immersive experience was like something that I was like, I want to do that again. I want to be out there for a really long time. Our guiding allows us to do 1 to 3 week trips, but I'm like, I want to do something longer than that. And so, I think Kai could just see like that was something I felt like I'd missed, and she's like, let's do it. If you want to do that, let's just do it. Let's do an all winter trip. And so, I mean, we talked about that for a while, but we're like, but how do we make that work? Like, we make our money in the winter. We've got to, we can't just take a year off. So we chose the Missinaibi River, and it's really neat because it retains that feeling of remoteness so well. You pass the little community of Matisse, but beyond that, you know, until you get to Moosonee at the end, like, you're not passing, you know, a lot of development, but you pass 3 train tracks. And so you pass the CP, the CN, and then the Ontario Northland.
Yeah, just trestles, remote trestles. That's
yeah.
where some people start the canoe trips from, right?
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, there's no station or anything, but you can ask the conductor to stop at kilometer, you know, XYZ. So we're like, this could actually work. Like, we could do, you and I, do the full winter-long trip, but every train track, that's going to be a leg. So people can just choose to sign up for whichever leg they want to do, and people will come and go. Thankfully, it didn't work out that way, because that would have been a logistical nightmare.
Well, because you'd be having to wait for people, so-and-so, because there's so much back and forth with your clients that you kind of wouldn't be able to do.
And we wouldn't be able to answer anyone's questions. Right. And, like, just, you know, takes people a bit of time to get up to speed. And, you know, if we had people that had done 1 or 2 legs and we'd started to form a sort of bond, and then you got strangers coming in, like new people coming in, I think it just would have been, it was way too optimistic, I think. But we put that on the website, and we were like, you can sign up for like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or all 5. And like right away, like 5 or 6 people signed up for all 5. And we're like, yeah,
what is wrong? These people are crazy.
Yeah, we're like, where are these people come from?
And are these your clients that you've worked with before, or totally new people?
A lot of them were, and we had advertised that 18 months in advance, and we said, if we don't know you, if you haven't come on a trip with us, you got to come on at least the week-long trip this winter, the year before. But that was a COVID winter, and like that was the COVID winter where all the lockdowns happened. So like they just couldn't come on trips with us, and we were like, well, we can't exclude people that, you know, seem ready, they were committed, they were going to come on a pre-trip to. So we ended up with 4 or 5 people that we hadn't met before. Some with very limited. I mean, one gal had no winter camping experience, and she's like, "I'm doing this."
Wow.
So yeah, we had like 5 or 6 people signed up for the whole thing, and we just said, "That's it. Let's shut down the legs option, and people can only sign up for the full thing." And we ended up filling the whole trip. So there was 10 people plus the 2 of us.
All your clients came along for the whole thing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it worked out like that.
Yeah.
Man, you guys must all hated each other by the end. Just kidding.
I mean, it was it was tough. I mean, there's no denying that. Like, but it was remarkably, there was no like major clashes or blow-ups or anything.
Wow, because that's a big thing that people don't think of. You got to stay alive out there. You got to make sure you're fed. You got to make sure you know your gear stays intact, because stuff's going to break and stuff needs to be sewn. But also just the people, as you saw with me and my brother on the road, which they leaned into in the edit. But I mean, like, you know, those were real arguments, right? It happens, man. People butt heads all kinds out there. I've heard of stories of 2 guys that went to trap in the Northwest Territories and got in such a big fight, they sawed their last bag of flour in half in a fight. You take this half, you take that. Of course, all of it dumped out, and they just both trudged off to their deaths. Yeah. Right? Like, yeah, that's wild.
I mean, the other in the winter too, and we try to keep this in mind, is like, you're out on a summer trip. I mean, often in the summer, people are individual tents anyways, because you know, you're not heating them through the night. You don't, but also like, you get in a fight with someone, you take a wander off 300 meters down the river, find a nice rock to sit on, chill out. But like in the winter, in the evening, you're not going to go chill out for an hour on a rock. Right. So you're in the warm tent. Yeah. So, you know, if you do have a disagreement with someone, all you can do is move 5 feet away to the other side of the tent, right? Like, so it is, I mean, it's like close quarters.
Yeah. And, how is there anything that you have to do that you've learned to try to, you know, help people that have disagreements? Because that's one of the things you have to, when you're a guide like this, you have to be like a psychologist,
Yeah.
right? You're not just out there. It takes a special kind of person to do these things and enjoy them and also work with other adults. Like, it's not like a camp counselor where you can just be like, Tommy, sit down, face the wall. You know what I mean? So is there anything like that you've run into before that's been explosive, or that you've had to use your speaking voice to try to like fix, or anything like that?
I think Kai really nailed the single biggest thing that's helped us is that she's like totally anti-clique, like before cliques even form. And so and often in the evenings I will sometimes pre-pack a portion of the next day for various reasons. Like if it's a big long portage in the winter, all the trees with the snow weight, they tend to collapse inwards. Trails become less obvious. Portage travel is just slower with the weight in the hills. So to pack it out the night before really helps.
So what do you pack out the night before? Just the gear, a bunch of the gear?
No, just the snow.
Just the snow.
Don't move
pack
anything.
Out, so you're breaking trail.
Yeah, breaking trail.
Yeah.
Or if there's a lot of slush, then to pack a length down a lake or something and come back, that slush will get exposed and freeze. So for a variety of reasons, I'm often out, packing trail.
Yeah. How far do you walk to break trail? Like all the way till where you're going to end the next day?
Yeah, it depends. Like in certain conditions, it's not advantageous. Like if the wind is blowing, then there's no point. Like I can go pack the trail, and by the time I turn around, it's already blown in.
Drifted over.
Yeah. Or if it's snowing, of course, same thing. And it doesn't take much snow to keep that slush from freezing. So like, if I pack it out and that much, like an inch of snow falls on it, it's still not frozen. But yeah, like on that big trip across Ontario, there was a few days where I'd pack, 10 kilometers.
Wow.
Because, we'd finish the day and then I'd have another 20 kilometers round
So
trip.
you'd finish it, and how far would you roughly travel in that?
About 10, yeah. So like I packed the whole way. So there was a few times where I'd actually like pack the next campsite.
Wow.
So we get to camp and there's like a nice not all the time, but when conditions were really, really bad, like, we spent a few days fighting with so much slush that we'd go like, you'd work all day and go 3 kilometers, and we're like,
brutal.
Okay, that's obviously not working. So, you take and when it's pre-packed, 10 kilometers goes quickly. Like, so you could walk those 10 kilometers on a pre-packed trail, be done at 1. I might help a little bit at camp, get a bit of firewood down just to make sure things are starting off well. I'm leaving at 2:00 or something. It's not real late in the day.
Not always the easier job, being the one that has to go break trail, like hard physically, with all the work at camp and cooking, and that's a lot of work too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's so nice, like when you're coming back, and it'd be after dark by the time I'm coming back, and like when that tent is all lit up with the lanterns inside, it's like just this beacon of like warmth and comfort. Then I know that like dinner's gonna be ready for me, and so it's always it's nice. Like it's a lot of work, but all that work's getting done at camp too.
Right.
So, but anyway, sorry, we got on a big divergence.
No problem.
What was even the original question?
Well, I was sorry. I was just getting into that story about you.
The psychology.
Yes.
So the biggest thing that Kai found, and I think I miss this sometimes because I'd be gone in the evenings, but Kai was like, we gotta like stamp these out, because sometimes I see them forming and I'm like, no, nothing's happening. But we had one trip in particular where there was like a really strong clique formed. And we had those guys were like, we want to have our own tent. We're like, yeah, sure, okay, have your own tent. But having their own tent became, well, we're going to have our own firewood supply, and these are our boughs, and this is our wood. And it become, then you have these different divisions, right, that aren't working together. So, like...
It's got to be more communism.
More communism for sure. Yeah,
100%.
From, what's that? From each according to their abilities, and to each according to their needs. Something like that, right?
What was that? What was that saying?
That's a communist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
From each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs. Yeah.
Right. Well,
and I'm not a communist, but on our trips we are.
In the purest sense of the word, right?
Yeah.
It has to be. I remember, I was just on a camping trip with some family members. My brother-in-law was like, "Hey, what do you take? Like, what is this, communism out here?" And I'm like, Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like it kind of, everybody's got to share everything you work
Yeah.
for. That's the only way it really works.
Yeah. And we're always hammering people with that. It's like, don't worry about what other people are doing. Like, if they're doing less than you, everyone wants to be contributing.
Right.
Like, that's what I believe. It's like, when people sign up for these trips, they want to be a really big part of
Yeah.
it. So if someone's slacking off during firewood time, like, it's because they need to, right? Like, because they're exhausted. And so I'm like, don't worry about what other people are doing. If you've got energy, cut the firewood. I guarantee that person that's not wishes that they had energy to be
Right.
cutting it, right? So, yeah. So to get to that point, what Kai started demanded we always do is always rotate through. We usually have 2 tents on the trip, and you rotate through. So it's like, it never becomes tent 1 versus tent 2.
Right.
And then when people are constantly rotating, you just can't, there's no opportunity to be like, oh, this wood's for us and my team, right? So,
and then also people just wear on you a little bit less.
yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Yeah, it's like
that's why a day off is good sometimes in
Yeah.
a canoe trip. You could all just go do your own thing, and maybe you don't think your buddy Will is evil anymore
Yeah.
by the end of the day. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah,
very
we had
real.
actually, for that big trip, one of the things we proposed to the group was, what if we brought a little 2-person tent and stove,
Right.
and then like once a week you're going to rotate into that solo tent. But people weren't really keen. It's so much work. And in hindsight, when we were out there and like you get to camp and there's so much work, we all were like, thank God we're not setting up a 3rd tent.
Right.
Just, you know.
Yeah, the setup's a lot, right?
Yeah, it is.
So you're using mostly like snow trekkers, right?
Yep.
And with the ones where you bring poles.
Yep.
So you have like the mega crew, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a pretty big tent to haul.
Yeah.
It all goes on one sled. So how do you like parse out who carries what? Are you kind of like moving stuff from the people that are able to pull more to the less and trying to balance everyone's load?
Yeah. So like on a lot of times now, especially on some of the longer trips, like we used to kind of just disgorge everything, just throw it out in the snow and be like, grab what you think you can take.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked, but you'd find like some people would be overeager and they'd have like 4 pieces of group kit piled on there. And so I often like will have a chart and pre-assign, you're taking this and that. And you know, we get a lot of returning guests. So on any given trip, about half are returning guests who I know. So I can kind of distribute weight well. And then, yeah, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about the winter travel as well, is that you can haul so much on a toboggan that if someone's really struggling, you can take tons of weight off and redistribute it. On a backpacking trip, like you can't really carry someone else's backpack for them, right? Like you just wear down so quickly. But one person can haul 2 toboggans pretty well, especially farther back in the line.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can redistribute it
And
quite
further
easily.
back in the line just because the trail's more broken in front of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's sort of the other, like, sort of just self-equalizing bit. We just tell people, like, if you're struggling to keep up, just pull out a line, fall back, it's going to be easier. So, yeah, it's usually very easy, even though we have, like, a big range of physical abilities. It's pretty easy to get it to the point where, like, obviously some people find it a lot harder and some people are going to, you know, not find it as hard, but we can get it to the point where, like, everyone can do it.
It really becomes like a science for you, I imagine.
Yeah.
Just with all the experience you've had. You know, what time do you usually, are you moving? Is camp broken and are you moving in the morning?
It depends, but we're definitely, I mean, short winter days, right? So we tend to do all the breakdown in the dark.
Right.
So we're waking up before sunrise.
So 5 a.m. wake up? Yeah, that's what we were waking up at Temagami. Didn't really seem to help us. Yeah, well, we did okay. We just ended up looping back through Laura, right?
Yeah.
But
I know, I mean, those conditions, so we were there like, a week after you, and it finally started to cool down.
Yeah.
Those conditions were hard. Like, and we see, and that's one of the things also that I say about winter travel. Like when people say, is this going to be a hard trip or an easy trip? I'm like, it depends. Like on a canoe trip, you got to deal with wind, but like the lake water is going to be lake water, right? Yeah. But like on a winter trip, you could be dealing with glare ice and do, 6 kilometers an hour. or you could be dealing with deep powder, or you could be dealing with slush, or you could be dealing with like mashed potato, heavy snow.
And you can't grade it. It's sort of like, well, this is going to take us longer, but by the time we get to the river, we'll have that current and it'll pick up. It's like you don't know whether it's going to be hard packed, smooth sailing there or not. You know, on the, you know what I mean? It's not like it's so up in the air.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and if you've got like a nice crust, like maybe you had a warm day, melted some of the top snow, and then it's frozen up and it's nice and crusty. You know, the tiniest little bit of fresh snow on top, and you've got all that friction again of fresh snow crystals. So it's like, it's so weather dependent.
Right. Yeah, it really depends. Yeah. Have you been noticing any more challenges just with the seemingly trending to warmer winters that we've been having?
Yeah, I mean, I think it absolutely, like, I mean, I believe in global warming. It's like irrefutable, but
you're a communist and you don't believe in global. Oh my God, just kidding.
But you know, when we started 15 years ago or so, we had a string of really warm winters, and I kind of was like getting a little bit doom and gloom of like, oh man, like either we've got to move further north or like I don't know what we're gonna do. But then we had a string of just like monster winters. Like, I mean, we had 13 feet of snow recorded in Sudbury the one year. The year before that was like a near record freeze up of the Great Lakes. Like it was off by like 1/10% or something.
That's the year that you did the Superior Provincial Park Trek, which is probably, the lake has never frozen up like that since along then.
No, definitely hasn't. Yeah. Big exposed headland. Wow. And, you know, our buddy who guides sea kayaks and he lives out there and he's always watching. He's an avid winter traveler as well. So he's always watching the ice conditions, and he's like, that headland never freezes up. And,
what magazine was that? Was that Explore or something? Yep. Yeah, that was phenomenal. So who was with you that took those photographs? Was that you guys? Or?
Kai would have taken some, and then Connor Myhell.
Oh, Connor was there with you too, eh?
Yeah.
Very
and
cool.
It was like, that was the most spectacular ice conditions we've ever seen.
Yeah.
You would get like just like skating rink flat, clear black ice. And it's so clear, like you'd see the bottom of the lake. But then you'd get, you know, some of the pressure cracks where you'd get some opaqueness and you could actually tell the thickness, and the ice would be like, you know, this thick.
Wow.
But then you'd get spots. So what we figured happened was that you'd get a calm period, lake would freeze up, but then a storm would roll in and smash the leading edge of the ice and pile it all up. And then you get another calm period. So basically, like, we'd go through sections of this like Zamboni flat ice, like could barely walk on it without studs, to spots where the ice was broken and jumbled like 12 feet high.
From where just the ice
where,
was breaking from waves, and as it kept freezing further and further out.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. But it'd be like a series of that, right? So like as you go further out, it was like calm, jumble. And so you could basically see the progression of how things maybe would have frozen on a calm week, and then a big storm would have smashed a bunch of it. Yeah, it was super cool.
You're able to walk into all those caves, essentially sea caves. Of course, they're on Lake Superior, but you're able to walk into them, explore them on the ice, right?
Yeah. And to have a local guide there, you know, usually we're the ones doing the guiding, but Connor knows that area so well. And like, so he was taking us to all these incredible spots that he was like, you know, usually it's so rough here that we're like 50 meters out and I can just point it out, but now we can walk right up. And some of these he called like secret pictographs that he knew of, but like often it was just too rough to go take a look at them, and we could access them
just because of rebound waves and stuff like that when he's in a kayak.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, what an amazing place that is too. I remember. Well, you know what? If there's a winter that's cold enough again, I got to make sure I jump on that.
Yeah.
So if you get word that stretch of Lake Superior is frozen, give me a shout.
Will do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have any of the footage from your 75-day trip up on your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So we're not great at putting videos together. We're great at shooting video footage.
I did notice. Yeah, I know it's so hard to edit it, but I did notice you've had some videos that have gotten a lot of views. You milling lumber and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's funny too. It's like, we've been doing these winter trips for so long and posting videos of them, and they don't tend to get a lot of views. And then my weekend hobby of milling is suddenly like millions of views on that, and so you never know really what'll appeal to people. And that's probably about my most poorly shot video, right?
Right, the one that did the best.
Yeah.
But it was also really cool because it really showed the process really well. It was a huge white pine that you're taking. What is your YouTube channel again? Just Lure of the North?
Yep.
Yeah, so people can go check that out and some other stuff too. But
thank you.
Yeah, what an interesting process. And what I didn't realize is that you've been stockpiling lumber that you'd milled by hand for a long time before you even started building your house. Can you walk us through that a little bit? Or
I mean, and Kai actually told I had so much stockpiled. Kai's like, you have to quit milling. You got to start. We can't keep building more sheds to store all this wood. You got to start using some of it. So I was like, okay, honey, you're right. Yeah. But yeah, I think so everything for me has been chainsaw milled, so Alaskan style, like with a Gramberg, and now I've moved into like a Swedish style using the Logasaw. But it's all chainsaw driven.
What's the Logasaw? Is that sort of just for squaring, or? No,
so the Logasaw you can mill the exact same, like you can mill boards off with it, but it's almost like a hybrid. Like so, with the Alaskan style, obviously you need a flat plane. Right, because you've got this irregular log, and you need a flat plane. So the most common way is like put plates on the end of your log,
or
and
ladder.
And put a ladder or rails or something flat above your log, and that gives you your flat plane. So then
you just use the
top
of the log.
Exactly. Once you've run your saw over once, now the log itself becomes the flat plane. But if you want to square it up, you got to roll the log, set your plates up again, get your 90-degree cut.
It's a process.
It's a process.
It's pretty big. It looks all like it's going to be fun. Then you're into it, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore.
So the Logasaw like simplifies almost like it uses a lot of the same concepts of a bandsaw mill, where like instead of you building the flat plane around the log, you've got like a bed, and you put the log on the bed, and then the saw can kind of run on a rail. So it means you're not kind of screwing things into the log all the time. Right. Makes it a lot faster, but you're still like, a chainsaw takes a big curve compared to a bandsaw.
Well, because the chain is this thick, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you need more power, and rip cut is, like when you're cross cutting with a chainsaw, it's kind of kerfing and chipping. That's where you get like the big sort of oatmeal sized chips. But when you're cutting down the grain, you can't chip them out, right? So you get like this like fine flour, like it needs a big saw, and it's sort of a slower
I just picked
process,
up a Still MS 500. The fuel injected one that's got like computer components, which kind of seem like they don't really belong in a chainsaw. But the guy's like, look, I could just plug this in. I could tell like what size bar you've been running, whether you've been ripping, whether you know what I mean, and it'll tell me what's wrong, just like with a vehicle. And plus the thing, like, I wanted to spring on one of those saws a long time ago. I'm like, I can't buy a $1,600 saw. That's just crazy. And then finally I was there, and I was going to buy a new saw. I didn't even know I had one. I was at the store. I didn't even know they're going to have one of these in stock because they're hard to find. I'm like, they have one. I'm like, I don't know. And the guy just like picked it up when I was mid-sentence and put it by the cash register on the counter. I'm like, God, man, this guy's good. You know? So I bought it, and I'm just like, where's this thing been all my life? Like, because the amount of time, and I have a 28-inch bar on it, and I'm just like, whoosh, whoosh, cutting, bucking up 4 logs at a time. And I'm like literally cut my time in half or more. I'm like, worth it. I mean, if you're doing the kind of cutting that you're doing, or that I'm doing with bucking up 11 cord a year, right? Totally worth getting a good saw.
Yeah, for sure.
What kind are you running?
Well, I actually have an arborist business now, so so I've got probably about 10 different saws, ranging from like tiny little battery powered top handle for up in the tree, all the way up to like for milling I'm using the Still 880. So it's it's the biggest one they make, 120 cc. But so sort of the whole range now. But,
just a different saw for every job, but you just pull out the really powerful one when you have to do your big white pines.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to, and what were you doing when you're cutting all this lumber to essentially then build your house, which is not a small house either, I might add. How many square feet is it?
3,200.
3,200 square feet. Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, three stories.
Yeah. So were you like, I'm gonna need? Did you do the math? I'm gonna need this many boards. I'm gonna need. Or did you just start going? This one would make a 6x6. Let's give her. This one would be, some true dimension 2x4s. Or did you?
So the framing lumber. We are in an organized township, so the framing lumber is actually purchased.
Okay, because you have to
has
purchase
to be
it because it's
stamped.
got to be engineered.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can still apparently find a lumber grader to come stamp your lumber.
Right, yes.
But it's like doesn't really exist that much anymore, the traveling graders. So for us, it was easier to just buy the framing lumber. But like everything, I mean, it's like thousands of board feet to cover the inside and outside and all the furniture and everything. Yeah, was all milled by me. So that, basically was just like, I love big wide boards. Like I love them to still look as close to a tree as possible. So like it was always just, what's the biggest boards we can get out of this? So, we've got some boards up on the wall that are 16 inches wide, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Which I've since learned there's some implications of those really wide boards being a little less like a 1x16 as it becomes a little more prone to cupping and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, we just love the big wide stuff. So it was like whatever this log will yield, the widest boards this log will yield, that's what we're getting. And so it was just like a random variety of everything and just stacks and stacks. And the milling it feels slow at first, like the first few times you do it. But then I was like, actually, it's something I can go out in the evening, and I could just one or two logs, and then it doesn't feel like this, oh my God, I just spent 8 hours pushing the saw through these logs. You get one or two logs done in an hour, and it's like, it's amazing how all of a sudden, it's just piling up.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of similar with cutting firewood too. And, it's one of those things someone was asking me the other day, well, you're not really saving any money if you just buy it and get it delivered split. And I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of like, because, you're getting outdoors, you're getting exercise, right? It's sort of like saying like, well, yeah, it would make a lot more sense if you paid someone to go work out at the gym for you. You think about all the time you'd save. You know what I mean? Like, how can you really? So it just becomes like a bit of a hobby in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, you do save money too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if I had turned around and worked extra hard at finding sponsors for my next expedition, would I have made as much? I don't know, but how much time are you going to want to work doing that other thing for? You got to switch it up and do some different kind of projects, work with your hands and stuff like that. And when I did the math a while ago, I was saving, and now it's probably more because we've been buying our logs. The vast majority of it, we buy the full log, get them delivered, buck those up and split them. And, then when it was costing me like $950 or something for 22 cords worth of logs, we were saving $900 a year. So now it's probably like $1,100 a year.
Yeah,
that's pretty substantial, man.
For sure.
For going out for an hour or two each day and
to do an activity that's awesome. Yeah,
and then you're teaching your kid how to do it, and the kid's probably going to be a freaking lumberjack by the time he's 12. You know what I mean? He's already out there trying to split stuff and. I guess is it similar with milling too in a way, or?
I for sure. I mean, and like some things, I mean, especially with that log saw where I don't have to set up the rails, like to take like just a little spruce that otherwise, I mean, it's not much in terms of firewood, but to just square that up, it's like 3 minutes or something. You've got a 4x4 or you've got a 6x6, and it's like, I mean, and a lot of those things, like trees that size, they're just breaking on the trail and stuff, and it's like, bring them home, throw them on the mill, and set that as like money in the bank, right? Having wood in the shed. Same with the firewood. Like, I mean, we just like, we're years ahead now, probably 3 years ahead. But I'm like, wow, fine. Like if one spring I decide I'm not going to get it into firewood this year because we're going to take off and do something else, that's fine. We've got, it's saved
You
up.
got it
It's in the
stocked.
bank, right?
Yeah, my buddy, when COVID and lumber prices went through the roof, he was in the middle of building up. Like he had a small cabin,
Right.
and he's building it to live there permanently. So him and his dad just split on a mill because they had a big
Right.
property with tons of wood and just like made all his own lumber.
Yeah.
You
Nice.
know what I mean? Yeah, and he's good with the math of the whole thing too. So he's like, okay, we can get this many boards out of this thing, this
Right.
many 2x6. And I'm like, wow, like I guess that's one thing it teaches you too, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
So when I was up doing me, Kai, and Jordan and Tori
Yeah.
came up to do a course with Lure of the North, and we did a lone spin-off course.
Yeah.
And this is Jordan who won
Season 6.
Season 6,
Yeah.
who's just like the guy's just like got horseshoes up his butt. Like he's just like, and like, he just seems like he's so happy out there, and he's just like, whoosh, porcupine, whoosh, grouse, whoosh, like just flailing arrows. I'm like, I didn't even see any of these animals. Like, he's got like a stack of animals you've harvested, right? I'm embellishing a little, but the guy's just like, he's just like, he's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, this was actually pretty soon after Kai got off of her season.
Yeah.
I was like super impressed by how much she was just like giving her. She kind of reminds me of Tori. She doesn't really want too much help.
Right,
She's
yeah.
like, let me take that. She's like, one time she's like, fine, and just like, threw it down. I'm like, okay, yeah. You know what I mean? Like they like very much do it themselves type of people. But one of the things that I thought was really cool was that you offered. So part of the thing we could do on there, which of course, if Kai could have trapped beaver on her season of Alone, because she had experience doing that, right? But you couldn't because it was a fur bearer.
Right.
That might have been a big game changer for her. But just those courses you offer, life on the trapline, and people can you explain that to us a little bit? What to us, to me, a little bit to our listeners, what the life on the trapline course is all about?
Yeah. So in Ontario, the province is divided up into crown trap lines.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really, really neat system because you get one person who's the head of the trap line. Yeah. They're the only person that gets a quota for animals, and they're solely in charge of managing. So you don't
and if they take too much, then their trap line doesn't produce anymore, and they don't make any money, and they ultimately would lose their trap line because you have to have a quota of X amount of beaver per year.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've got to take a minimum amount of beaver, but you also have max quotas. And you know that there's no one else competing with you.
Right.
So you are the person, this is your line, you manage it, you're going to try and keep it sustainable and productive for years and years. So the downside is it can be hard to get on a crown trap line because someone gets it, they're going to hold on to it. But that head trapper can sign up as many assistants as they want. Those assistants all work under the head's quota. But yeah, when we took the trapping course, the guy who taught us the course, he was saying, yeah, I got to drive 5 hours north to get to my trap line. Wow. So I'm there, weekends only. And we were just really lucky to meet the guy, Andrew, who's running the line right adjacent to us. And he's totally open, he's got some young girls at home. And so, he's more busy and lots of things going on with his life. And so he was open to us helping.
And so you can help him essentially meet the beaver quota.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And he's basically said to us, like, he's not doing a lot of trapping. So he's like, you just tell me what you want to take, where you want to work. And so we're like in the super lucky position. I don't think a lot of people get this where like, our home is on our trap line. So, we can leave with the snow machine and like, we don't have to load it in a truck. It's just, we're gone. We're on the line.
Right.
So yeah, that means that, and trapping is also unlike hunting. Like if you don't have a hunting license, you can't go help your friend. You can't push deer. You can't be involved. Right. But trapping, you can. You're allowed to take people out on your line, demonstrate how to trap, and like they can help. We have to be ultimately the ones that put the trap in the water.
Because you're not, well, you have to be the one that traps in water, but you're not out there. You're just watching someone set a trap as opposed to actively interacting with wildlife at the time. Right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, we take people out on our line, and we primarily focus on the beaver simply because that's the one that has a minimum. Yeah. And
there's a lot of beavers.
There's a lot of beavers. Right? Yeah. And they're big animal. We eat them as well.
Yeah,
So
they're
get a lot of meat.
amazing eating.
Yeah,
if you
amazing
do, I guess if you
eating.
cooked it right,
Yeah.
and they're so fatty, and all the stews and everything.
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
it's so good. Yeah, I mean, like a beaver, big beavers are over 60 pounds. Most of them are 50 pounds, the adult beavers, and we have to take 30 a year. I mean, that's a lot of meat, and I feel
That's the minimum you have to take just to meet the
minimum,
quota. And this is of course, beavers create a lot of damage.
Yep.
They flood roads. They prevent emergency vehicles from getting to help people and all these kind of things. And that's one of the reasons why in our area there's such a high population of beavers. They want to try to keep those numbers in check because of the damage. And so that's why trappers provide a really big service and a big, also a lot of conservation as well. I know a lot of people don't like trapping or think that it's cruel, but you're trapping beavers with a conibear trap. This is as low as a carbon footprint, as sustainable and as healthy as a food source as you're going to get in the world potentially. What you guys are doing out there, right?
Yeah.
And it's also pretty cool too, the experience of getting out there and doing it. Yeah. So do people get to, don't they? So in your trapline course, do you make something out of the pelt, or what do you do there?
Yeah, so we've split it because there was so much there. We've split it into 2 courses. So the first week, we're just out on the land and trapping as many animals as we can. We always eat like 1 or 2 beavers out there in the field just to get that experience of butchering it in the trap camp. But
do you ever get any like immature comments about the beavers? The beaver punt?
No, never heard. What are you talking about?
Sorry, that wasn't one.
No,
just asking for a friend.
No. Yeah, nobody ever mentions anything about eating beaver.
Okay, good. Yeah, right.
So the first week is like really focused on trapping them. Of course, they freeze, send them all home, and then the second week, and people can sign up for one or both or either. The second week is butchering, how to get the hides off, how to take care of the meat, and grind the meat or stew chunks or whatever, and labeling and packaging it. But we're also rendering the fat, making soap out of it, cleaning the skulls for people, showing them how to preserve those to take home. And then, we're tanning the hides as well. And so we're usually bringing in someone to help with that. We had Caleb from Canadian Bushcraft coming out to help us, Caleb Musgrave.
I should get him on the podcast, actually.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we had Caleb Musgrave coming out to help us. And so it's like we're eating the meat, we're preserving the skulls, we're utilizing the fat, and we're saving the hides. I don't know if we've worked in, I think maybe one year we had a bit of extra time and worked in making mitts, but otherwise, we send people home
but
with patterns.
But you get the pelt, and they can do whatever they want with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. Yeah. And what kind of feedback have you had from these sort of traditional
it's been, when we first advertised it, we had a couple of people, that didn't support trapping, but for the most part, it's been so supportive. And that's, exactly what you just said was what I tell our participants. It's 90% of people are going to support this, but you might get 10% that give you some negative comments. Right. But when you go home, what you can remember is that you spent the week eating rodents that, breed prolifically and that grew in a 30 square kilometer radius, and you caught with a simple steel trap, and you left the environment intact. And for me, I'm that's it. We took animals out of the environment, but the environment's still there to support more of those animals, as opposed to whatever, means of destruction of the environment to change it to, that's sort of a deeper topic or whatever. But to me, I'm it's we're eating rodents out of the local environment. That's tough to beat, right?
I know. And that just as far as the deeper topic goes too, it's when you get out there and you see what you guys are doing, I think very few people would really have an issue with it, you know, especially when you compare that to like the slaughterhouse or like, you know, the factory farm where most people are getting their meat from, right? Yeah. Which is a whole other story too, right? So that's cool. I also, another one that was really interesting in the way that you manage, like this is what I kind of see. You're kind of like me in a lot of ways. You're like, here's what we want to do. How can we make this work? Right? Like on paper, how many other people that have guided trips have done a 75-day trip? How I have never heard anything like that offered. Like that is wild, right? But this is what you wanted to do, and then you made it work. And you know, I do a lot of that myself, and on paper that might not always be the best business move, but if it's what keeps me engaged and passionate, then it is the best business move, because otherwise I'm not going to want to do anything. I'm not going to want to do it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I see you managing to do that, but also managing to work with things and almost make them more interesting, right? Like last year we had the worst winter or best winter, whichever the way. For you especially, it's the worst winter, but it's so warm and you had a course. So what you ended up doing is this traditional style of travel where you incorporated snowshoeing on ice and then paddling through open stretches. Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So I mean, thanks for bringing that up, because I kind of forgotten, but that's something that it turned out it was this like negative of like, what are we going to do? So we were looking at a crossing up Temagami, the same route that you talked about earlier. Yeah. And we just had such a we had scheduled it quite late. But it was such a mild winter. We're like, this is not going to work. So we went to the guests and we were like, okay, what we're proposing, one proposal is we go way north, but now we're going to spend 4 total days of our 2-week trip just driving, 2 days driving up, 2 days driving back. We were going to go up the James Bay Highway and then the farther inland highway at the top of that
into Quebec, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. La Route Nord or something like that.
The Trans-Taiga Highway. So you go up the James Bay Road, and then there's the Trans-Taiga that goes inland. So it's getting up to higher elevations, farther away from the moderating effect of the sea, and it's like even colder up there. But most people were like, not crazy about like this last minute change, tons of driving. Yeah. So we're like, okay, this sounds crazy. Yeah. And we'd always, like every year when we get a warm spell, people joke like, oh, we should have brought canoes. And I was like, no, we're serious. Let's bring canoes. Right. And there is a historical precedent for it, but people aren't doing it anymore, right? Like, but when we presented it to the guests, we're like, okay, back to Garrett Conover again. Him and his ex-wife had written Snowwalker's Companion, but Garrett had also written Beyond the Paddle. So it's like a canoe tripper's skills beyond just paddling. So it was ice travel.
How come I haven't heard of that one?
It's out of print, and it just was never that popular. Yeah. But I picked it up, I think, before it was out of print. But so it talks about portage skills, which is underlooked, but there is a lot that can go into that. It talks about poling skills and then ice travel. And the ice travel is fairly short section, but like I snapped some pictures. I was like, look at people. We're not making this up. Yeah. There is, a precedent of this. And of course, Kylan and I, like I said, we resisted buying an ATV for like 7 or 8 years. So living where we did.
Was that in part just because you guys are such pioneer types too, though?
I think I just didn't like, I think money was stretched then. Like we bought the property and it's like, it had to go so many different directions, but also like, I mean, we were so focused on the water access that we didn't really think the trail was going to be usable. And the trail is rough, but it's usable, especially midsummer. So before we had the ATV, we were just doing that, like to get to town. If the lake has opened up around the edge, we'll take the canoe, paddle across the open water, get up on the ice, haul it across. And that's just, but we'd never done it on a trip, right? So anyways, we sent all this to people and we said, okay, we've done a little bit of it, and of the 8 participants, 4 said, yeah, let's do it. Like, and we also, we joked about this. It's like, if we're trying a brand new style of travel, would have been easy to say, let's do a 4-day trip. Let's do a couple of lakes. Just figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. But what we proposed was, we're going to do a 2-week trip. We're going to start at the eastern end of Killarney on the Killarney Highway. We're going to go up the east end of Killarney into Panache Lake. We're going to go all around Panache. We're going to come down the west side of Killarney. Then we're going to get down the Whitefish River out to the north channel of Lake Huron.
Cool.
We're going to paddle the north channel of Lake Huron, and we're going to get either all the way to the town of Spanish, or we kind of pass close to our house, or we're going to cut inland and make it back to our house. So, like 120 kilometer 2-week journey.
Yeah.
First time figuring it out, right?
Wow. So I didn't realize there was so much of a paddling component in it. I thought you were just kind of like getting across the sketchy spots of ice, but you were actually doing paddling for pretty long stretches on the bay.
Yeah. So there was a few big stretches down the Whitefish River. There was, big sections of open water there. And then we got out to the North Channel. And we started paddling there, and we're like, that's it. Like, it was wide open. We're like, that's it. There's no more ice. We're going to have 4 days of paddling to Spanish.
And what time of year is this again?
End of March.
End of March. Wow. Yeah.
And so, but then we hit this. That was probably one of the coolest spots. We hit this floating pan of ice out there. And it was so wavy because there's so much open water. There was fetch for the waves to develop. So we're pulling the canoes up, but like this big pan, you can see that it's moving relative to the island. So it's like this big free floating pan. And like the waves are coming up onto the ice as we're pulling the canoes up. And then you're walking across this, big floating pan.
And you made little ski sleds, sleighs for the canoes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you could just sit the canoe right on that and then pull it right across.
Yeah. So just very simple, like 2 skis, 2 crossers, canoe sits on top, everything goes in the canoe. Mm-hmm. And they were like just totally untested. Yeah. And we're taking them on a 2-week trip.
Yeah. Hope these work.
Yeah. And there was a big learning curve, like with such long skis, and it was like glare ice for like 2 weeks before the trip. And we're like, people, this is going to be so easy. These things, you're going to give them a push at the start of the day, and you're going to pick them up at camp at the end of the day, right? And then literally as we're like launching for day 1, it's snowing. And so then now we're pulling these things through like this
wet snow, probably too.
Yeah. And with those big long skis, they just don't turn. Like there's way too much resistance in that heavy snow. So like you'd be walking along, and if you curve a little bit, it just wouldn't follow you. It would just keep going straight. So all of a sudden you look beside you, and you're just like, it's up here. You're pulling laterally against it. So there's a big learning. We eventually.
So I guess one person steers it from the back.
Well, that's what we were doing for a while, but it's like you're just fighting with the thing. Yeah. Eventually, one day I was losing it, and I usually love hauling. Like you kind of just get into like your mind. It's easy. You're walking across the lake. It's flat. You don't have to think about where you're going. Your mind wanders. It's just like solitude. Right. And I was just like every minute of every hour is just fighting with this thing, and I was like, I'm not enjoying this. Right. And then I like turn around and shove the canoe back. So like the skis were basically almost like popping a wheelie. Oh, and they just turned on a dime, just followed you everywhere you went.
So the back of the canoe was sort of dragging on the snow at that point?
Almost, yeah, not quite. Like you get a balance point where it's like the skis are still flat, but there's so little weight up front. When you pull, they just turn with you, So there's lots of little, this was brand new for us, of the things we learned. Like initially we thought, for a short section, if it's just like a little narrows in the lake where the water's opened up, we'll just leave the skis on, push the canoe in the water, pull it up with the skis. But the skis have so much less surface area. When you tried to pull it up on the ice, the skis would start to crest onto the ice, but then they'd break through. And now the ski tips would be under the ice. Right. And like, you just, it's this fight you're on very thin ice, trying to pull this up. So we learned, even if
take it off.
Doesn't matter if it's 10 meters, you're taking them off. It's 2 straps, you undo 2 straps, throw the skis on top of the canoe.
They overhang.
And you just bobsled the canoe into the water.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Cool.
Much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a blast. I didn't realize it was such a significant trip too, with all that on the lake. Where I've seen pictures of those is old, like black and white pictures of them strapped to Inuit kayaks. So I think that was common. The Inuit would just have this little sledge essentially with two runners and sort of like, just whatever, you're holding them together about the width of the kayak, and they just strap that on top,
right,
and then just drag the kayak. Sometimes I think they'd be holding the front of the kayak up, and that would be closer to the back, and then get the pan of ice, get on, go across, and jump back in, and the world is your oyster.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I mean, it was like and that route in particular, like a lot of these narrows, it's pretty steep rocky faces, so like if we had decided to portage them, like you would look and be like, man, that'd be brutal to haul everything up and around and over that cliff. And instead just launch it in the water, straight across, back up on the ice.
Yeah.
And just so much fun. And we were wearing dry suits, so it made it took that fear out of like, you could bob around in the water. But there was some spots where so it was such a mild winter, and then on our trip, it was like some of the more consistent cold we had. So even though it was late March and we were expecting everything to be melting, some mornings we woke up and had fresh ice. So like where we had expected to get a lot of rotten white spring ice, we were actually getting like nice, clear, black, flexible ice some mornings on spots that would have been open like the day before.
Walkable.
And walkable.
So an inch ice overnight.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But like creaking. And so like you'd just be like one person on either side of the canoe and just bobsled it like down this, like, I remember one right outside of Willisville, there's like a long channel there that's almost always open because the current through there. And we were able to just walk right down the middle of the channel. And there's this little hamlet there of Willisville. So like, and I know a lot of people there now doing a lot of work there. And someone's like, they texted us and they're like, is that you that just went by the channel?
Who the hell else would it be?
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. So you started without a background in this. You learned through a little bit of trial by fire. You got into it, met Kylan, I guess, when you were going to college.
Yep.
And made this your whole life, not just the business aspect, but your whole personal life too. Is very much like bush life, right? How's it been? Would you recommend that sort of path for others? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it like our life where we are has been so incredibly rewarding. But I've said to Kai, like, even if it hadn't been, like, even if it was a failure and we'd been like, not for us, like, I think it still would have been worth doing, right? Even if it doesn't work out, because I was like, if we'd have never tried this, like if we'd have never come out and like had the opportunity to try and make our own lumber and build our own home and just live out here, then like I would have always wondered, right? There would have, like, at the end of my life, I'd be looking back being like, what if we'd have done that? Like, and so, I mean, for me, I'm like, it doesn't even really matter. It did work and I am happy. Like, but I'm like, even if it hadn't and been terrible, it still
wouldn't have been a failure.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a failure because it would have been worth being like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wonder anymore. It sucked. Like, glad we're not doing that. So, I mean, for me, like, if you've got a passion, you got to try. Like, even if that passion ends up being like, no, wasn't what I expected. If you never even try it out, like, I think you'd always, at least for me, I'd always wonder, right? So
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, kind of thing.
Exactly.
I think as Belichick, coach of the Patriots, said, and this is kind of what you're touching on, is why do we grade success on external forces? Why don't we grade success on we did as best as a job we could with the best of the abilities we had, and beyond that maybe, but that's the point where we should say this has been a success, because until all these external forces that are outside of your realm come in and squash what you're doing or prop it up or whatever, why do you say this is a failure if you had nothing to do with that? You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm getting out of what you're saying a little bit too, is like, get out there, do it. And whether it turns into this larger thing or not, it's still a success in a lot of ways, because it's rewarding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny that all the things that are rewarding are like freaking require a lot of sweat equity though, isn't it? Yeah. That's wild, man. And so what's do you think is, like, if there's anything else, I guess, that you would want to share with somebody that's thinking, hey, you know, I want to get into the outfitting business, or, you know, I want a little bit more of this life that's close to nature. Is there any other information that you could give them without, you know, without just like creating a direct competition? We'll see Lure of the Northeast.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I mean, I think you touched on it earlier. I don't remember exactly the context, but you were saying something about like, oh yeah, you were talking about values of like, oh, could I have earned more doing something else? And you're like, yeah, but like, this is what I wanted to do. So like, the value was less relevant. Like, I mean, obviously we need to pay our bills and whatnot, but like, yeah, for us, that's always been like one of our principles, is like, the trips have to be interesting to us. You know, we have to be having fun. If we're not having fun, it's going to be so obvious, right? Like, if we're not having fun, the guests aren't going to be having fun. And so like, that's been something like our business model has always been built around, is like you were saying, it's like, you guys just seem to do things you want to do. And that's always been it. It's like, it's nice with the seasonal aspect as well. Like, at the end of a season, it can be pretty hectic. You know, we kind of have to decompress, take a breath, but then we're sort of like, what do you want to do next year? Like, you know, and yeah, like that Ontario crossing is a great example where Kai was like, you want to do this. I know you want to do this. You've been talking about it. So like, we're going to make it happen, you know? And we came up with what we thought was super creative with the legs, and the legs didn't matter.
Didn't even
people
work
just,
out.
yeah.
Isn't that
but
wild?
like, you know, it was like, it at least gave us the vision that we're like, okay, I think we can do this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think like, you know, and some people will come up like with a business plan and decide to start something. But for us, it was like just sort of following this passion. And like, as people requested things, we're like, okay, you know, we can offer that. We're interested in that. We want to do that. And like, yeah, you know, so it was we also never had these huge investments that caused a lot of stress. Like,
Right.
yeah, we kind of just grew with like following our hearts, following what people wanted. And yeah.
It seems like a good path, I think, anyways. I can kind of compare that a little bit from what I'm doing, but you know, on the content side, what's going on this winter? Are you doing Tomogamy? Are you what trips are you going to be doing?
Yeah, so we've got a week-long, what we're calling Slow and Steady. So that was like a special request by some of our like more senior guests that were like, I don't want a trip where we just sit. But also some of these like more ambitious travel trips are getting a bit hard. You know, we've had people now that have been coming for 10 years, right? So some of them are saying, okay, like, I still want to travel. I still want to see the landscape and camp at different spots. So anyways, so that's one sort of shorter travel days, closer to home. So we've got sort of easy access to logistical support if we need it. We've got the North Channel. So yeah, from sort of, so just the other side, like north of Manitoulin Island.
Yeah.
So traveling from our place to the town of Spanish. That's super cool because it's like, last year we did that same trip, and like, you're in amongst these like beautiful sea kayaking islands, and with the current, there's spots where it stays open. And so it's like, we ran into this spot where there was this huge channel of open water coming past, and I'm
just
like,
from just currents.
yeah. And so like, we end up like kind of scooting in amongst these little islands, and I was like, man, this feels like sea kayaking right now.
Yeah.
Like tucking into these little coves and finding a little path through. So that was really fun.
How good have you been gotten at being able to read ice conditions?
It's like, I mean, to me, that is like one of like picking firewood and reading ice are probably like two of the fundamental skills to like safe and efficient winter travel. And so sometimes I get complacent, but for the most part, I think that spidey sense is pretty honed. That was one of the really cool things with that spring trip, was like being in dry suits, purposely going out when the ice is really thin and really getting to push the boundary. It's like you learn so much in a single day of that about like what
Don't
sort
do
of
this
ice
at home,
was-
but you can totally walk on an inch of ice. I know
Yeah.
this because I've done it.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah. So, but you're right. You don't want to, the 4-inch standard that the government promotes is usually what I publicly say.
Right.
But you can,
Until now.
cautiously get away with a lot less. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's, if you're further out from shore and there's more water under, there's all these components of it, right?
Yeah,
And like
exactly.
that's something that is something you could just study in and of itself, but also something that you probably have to be out there doing it, I guess, to really learn.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, we had a company approach us to do like an ice rescue course, and ultimately, I kind of backed away from that. And the biggest thing was I was just like, I mean, so much of what we do is not prescriptive.
Right.
It's just like, you just need a lot of time on the ice. And so like how to put that into like a model, was something I just, I think they run a great course, but I'm like, it just wasn't something I can translate from my experience to that.
Yeah. Wild. Anything else? So that you got,
yeah,
you're doing Temagami, you're doing the North Channel.
And then we're going to do that same icebreakers trip this time.
Oh, you're offering it again.
We're offering it again.
So obviously it was a success.
Oh, we loved it. Yeah. I mean, it was the trip. I mean, because it was so fresh, but it was the trip that I thought about most through the summer, through the off season. Was like, oh, that was cool. Yeah. So
neat. So, but what time are you going to do it? It's so hit and miss.
it is hit or miss, and that's been a big hurdle with like, how do we offer something that's trying to hit like a 3-week window in the spring? But what I liked about, we're doing the same route because you've got sections of the Whitefish River that are going to be open no matter what. The North Channel is going to be so much different than the inland lakes. So we're like, actually, we've expanded that window by going on lots of different terrain. So it's going to be the last week of March and first week of April. And I think even if it's a cold winter, we're going to find open water to paddle across. Even if it's a mild winter, the North Channel might not be holding any ice anymore, but the inland lakes should almost certainly have some.
And that sounds like something that makes it interesting, because it's never going to be the same twice, right?
Yeah.
So there's always going to be new challenges, new things, even on the exact same route.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what about smaller courses like Life on the Trapline and stuff? Are you doing those?
Yeah, this is the first year in quite a while that we're not offering it. We decided just to take we've been kind of like full on every year for a number of years. And we thought, you know what, this year we still have 6 weeks of trips offered. But we thought,
Pretty substantial.
yeah. So we thought we're going to offer a few fewer. So Life on the Trapline, we think is probably going to be in every other year now. So it'll probably be around 2026 winter. But yeah, so just the 2 1-week trips and 2 2-week trips.
Cool.
Yeah.
And we talked about your YouTube channel and some of the films and stuff that have been shot on your adventures. What about Instagram? That's a place people can find you.
Yeah. So Kai takes care of all that. She does an awesome job. She is, I'm biased, but she's a spectacular photographer. And also, she's a lot more philosophical than me, and she tries to, So Lure of the North on Instagram as well, but she shares a lot of beautiful,
really good content.
photography. And
Where can someone go sign up?
lureofthenorth.com.
And they can just get onto your website, and there's some answers, and they can just kind of click and go through the motions.
Yeah. And like, I mean, it's Kylan or I that answer the questions. So like, if someone has more questions, contact us, email, phone numbers on there, and we answer any questions, and we help. We try to help people ensure that they're getting on the right trip, right? So
Yeah. So you just kind of like basically consult people and be like, sounds like this one would be perfect for you as opposed to this one and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with people that might be interested in getting into winter camping or be interested in taking one of your classes, courses, trips, and all the above?
I mean, just, yeah, reach out to us and like, yeah, I mean, it can feel intimidating. It can feel like a big learning curve, but like ultimately what we do is so simple. Like it's, you know, there really is very small learning. There's a lot to learn, but like, it's just walking what we're doing, right? Like,
Right.
it's not a
That's true.
complex skill.
Essentially, you are walking.
Yeah. So like physically, I mean, it's like an endurance thing. You know, you might be walking for a long time every day. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very accessible, and we've always had an attitude of like, we're here as a team. Like, it's not a bunch of individuals. Like, if we need to shift weight, we shift weight, you know? And so anyone coming with an attitude of like, willingness to accept help and willingness to be open to be like, yeah, I mean, this is too much and I need to shift some weight, then they're going to be totally fine, you know? Yeah.
Cool. So. Okay, well, hey, thanks a lot for coming out. That went by pretty fast. I think it's over 2 hours. So, yeah, I appreciate you making
This is
time.
the first podcast I've ever done.
Well, you crushed it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Thanks a lot.